Okay, so this is day 2 of making stuff out of paper. This is the book for the class. Again, it's Go by, it's a, sorry, it's a kid's guide to graphic design. See, Chip Kid. Anyway, this is actually a design book that's meant for younger people, but honestly, I find it just so nice in that the examples are understandable. A lot of graphic design books use these really high end examples, which are, of course, beautiful, but they're really hard to understand why that thing is special versus something else. This makes it much easier, and I really love this book. Um, okay, today we are going out again. I would suggest when you guys get this, just go ahead and read all the way through it. It's a really quick read, and it's very nice. So, what I want to do today is kind of work on some of these things which are just elements, essentially. They're form. They are big and small, scale, top, bottom, and inversion, left to right, in front of and back of, focus, out of focus, juxtaposition, vertical, horizontal, light, dark, image quality, image cropping, repetition and pattern, symmetry and asymmetry, simplicity, complexity, color theory, primary colors, secondary colors, abstract, literal, positive space, negative space, and visual variation. So whatever that we can get through today will be awesome. The reason I want to talk about all these things while we're just working with pieces of paper is that, again, it just keeps you from worrying about technical ability, right? Nobody's going to get on you for how good you are with a pair of scissors. But once we get into Illustrator and things like that, it does become more about the tools and less about the aesthetics and creativity and design thinking. And that's really sad. So I do want to start with this while we're still just playing with paper. Form. Form is just, if you unfocused your eyes and looked at this, what would it look like, right? Can I actually, let's see. Is it better if I go the other way? There we go. So, out of focus. See how this looks very similar to the way that it looked before? But now we can reduce it to just the basic shapes, right? Red, red, stripe of red, white, a little bit of black, and then this repetitious pattern down here with a tiny bit of red that kind of gets lost right there. But this form, no matter whether it's in focus or not, get you back into focus. There we go. This form is going to look the same. These are when we use our big, bold things. This is not when we use something like this, like we did last time, right? Because when we unfocus on this, or when it's far away, right? Because really, we don't look at a poster and look at it not focused. We look at a poster maybe from far away. Whereas see these, you don't really see that these are individual little microbes from this distance. They just look like spots. And from a greater distance, it would just look like a big square of green or blue, whatever aqua color this is. It looks like just one big shape. So this is one thing we need to think about, is that some things, very pretty, will get lost. Now we can use that to our advantage, right? If I want something that's big and bold from a distance, I could just use 2 stripes, right? 2 big and bold stripes. From a distance, it just looks like the number 11 or, II or whatever. But as you get closer, you get another level of detail that gives you a little more visual interest. The cool thing about that is that it keeps your viewers' attention for longer, right? The big thing gets you there from a distance, it draws you in, and then all the little details give you something later without it being too complicated and being busy to start with. Big and small. We talked about this a little bit yesterday with big and small things. You can take this tiny little face, you make it big, you make it small again. This is a little hard to do with the cutouts that we've been working with, but not impossible. Set the book to the side real quick. See what we got. Let me bring all my goodies back out. See, what could we do? And I've brought some more 3-dimensional stuff because I just wanted to show you kind of what you can do with 3D stuff. So So if you see me reach off into the distance, that's me getting other goodies. So we can do big and small simply by finding versions of an object, right? Just two rocks, big one and a small one, right? We can say things with big and small too. We don't just have to be overbearing about our big and small. We can use it to indicate group status, right? These three are hanging out. This one's big and different, right? Are these ones afraid of this one? Did they break off from it? Are they broken parts of another one that was this big? These are little rocks, by the way. I don't know what they look like on camera. But we can use these and we can do something different, right? What if we use our big and small in order? How about that? Does that do something? Right? Does that start to be an interesting thing? Or a little advertisement? That starts to be something, just using this big and small method. Of course, once we get into actually being able to scale stuff digitally, you can do even more with big and small. Sorry for the sound when it's in a little metal tin. All right. So one thing I wanted to show you, and the reason I'm just kind of going through this in order, is that this book is really good for reference. When you're thinking of a project and you just can't really figure out a good starting point or even good options, just run through this list. Have I tried that? Have I tried that? Have I tried that? Have I tried that? By the time that you get to the end of this list, you either figure out a problem or figure out a solution, or there just won't be one. Example of big and small. Example of really small, right? This is a really great example. If you take this space between these buildings and put a person at the bottom of it, right? That gives us a really interesting thing going on. Scale, I'm not going to worry about this in this case. One thing we could do is something like this. It's just when we have objects, is just crop in really, really tight. I have a cat from yesterday. We could just crop. Right? What if I just took a picture? Loud noise. Right, what happens if we do that and take a picture just to there, right? Because this is these really big cat eyes. It gives us something interesting. One thing you could also do is if you had multiple sizes of the same object, whether it be a picture of something or things like those rocks, think about doing it maybe with if you had a high heel and a like Barbie doll high heel, right? You could put them in the same design and say something interesting about like, this is what you aspire to, right? Like, this is what we're going for. You could do the same thing with a Hot Wheels car, right? You could do a Hot Wheels car and then either like a picture right down the side of a real car, or you could use the scale to even say something different. You could have a Hot Wheels car next to something like a car key, showing that the car key is very large by comparison to this, and it's part of an even larger object. So you can use it kind of multi-layered like that. It does not have to be a specific thing. All right. Inversion is one that I want to talk about. Flip something upside down. Right? Flip it upside down. For something like Batman, makes sense, right? It's easy. Batman flips upside down because he's bad. But we can take inversion. This is a handbook for drowning is the name of this book. We can take something like inversion just to make things peculiar. We can make things odd. For example, let's use some of those examples for yesterday. What happens if I was having a lot of fun with that with the 100% real. But what happens if we just put it upside down, right? Right? Our surrealist bit from yesterday gets a little bit weirder. Inversion is just a way to draw attention. We know it's not normal, so we look at it and we say that's not normal, and we pay more attention to that object. Sorry guys, there's going to be a lot of noise today just because I've got more full-size objects or more non-2D objects. Let's see. So I just grabbed some Legos. We have 4 Lego figures. None of these figures attract our attention over any of the others, right? Maybe the purple pants on that is a little bit of a focus, but none of them really do it, right? But what if I take one and I turn it upside down? Well, now we have a focal point. We have something that is different than the rest, and we want to know why it's different. We start to move down that path and wonder about the story. And I could change it even a little bit more by setting him out of the scene, right? And then cropping that down to just that point. We get interesting things going on just by simple little changes. Inversion is a very simple technique. You see this a lot on billboards and stuff, where they'll just either flip the text this way or they'll flip the text upside down. Both work. I think this is a very interesting way to attract attention because it doesn't mess with legibility. Our brains are pretty good at turning things that are upside down right again. For those of you that watch a lot of TV, the upside down in what show am I thinking of? Stranger Things. Yes, Stranger Things. The upside down, almost all of their advertisements for that show was just stuff like this. It was just real simple inversion stuff, but it looks weird, it attracts attention, and it gets the idea across that there's this like other place. Okay, Lego guys, go over there for now. Okay. Left to right. Left to right is interesting. Left to right is the way that we read everything, right? Everything. Southern living, left to right. If I asked you what color all these doors were, right, you would not say black. You would start with light blue, blue, pink, yellow, tan, black, right? You do not start down here. We start over here. We go top left to bottom right, and we go left first. Then we quote unquote enter down, and then we do left to right again. We keep going. So realize that's position number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is just the order in which we read things, right? If I have this guy, this lady, and 2 kids, right? It's a family, father, mother, 2 kids, right? And there's a masculine hierarchy thing, right, with having the father first. If we switch that around, we can say something else by just reordering the structure. We can just put it in a different order, and it makes it mean something else. One thing that's also really important, that's kind of a left to right thing, but a little bit different, is we are so used to looking and reading and moving left to right that when we are talking about the viewer always moves left to right. The good guy in a comic book will always be on the left, going right. The bad guy will always be on the right, going left. It's always the way it's going to go. It's weird, but that's just the way we do things. Everybody, because this is the way we read, this is the way all of the people that are with us go. So they're the good guys. Anything that's stopping us from reading, right? Those are the bad guys. They don't go. So if I put, these guys on their sides. Oh, can I do that? Nope, they're not going to do that. So if you put these 2 people on their sides like this, This is our guy, right? Think about it in a video game, right? Where are the good guys and where are the bad guys if it's a side scroller, right? You're the good guy moving across the map like this, and then the bad guys are coming this way for you to jump on them. We go left to right, bad guys go right to left. And that works for stage direction, that works for anything. If you want somebody to look really friendly, have them on this side of the page looking out and this way. If you want somebody a little bit more sharp and aggressive, put them on this side, look this direction. Actually, if you look at all of your profile pictures, they're either straight neutral or this side looking this way. Let's see, I was wondering if there was an ad in here that we could get a good example of that. See, the baby's evil. No, that's not true. That's just the way that they laid out that picture. Just gonna find example, but all these pictures are food. Example, see, facing that direction. She's friend, she's smiley, she's happy. We're good to go. And if you do need to go on the other side, put the person's face straight out. Right? Even though he's facing this way, face is directly out and our cow is looking the correct direction. So if you do have to be on this side, face straight forward. Just FYI. Makes life easier. And also, if you need, one thing to think about with this is that if you need to, like, let's say you're doing the cover of a book, right? And your main character is this really nice person that goes bad. Well, maybe you put that person over here and you face them this way. So we just get this kind of vague sense of discomfort, right? We get this weird, uneasy sense. So yeah, left to right is not just order of things that we read, which it is, but it is also, it is also good and bad, and it's the motion of a story versus the blocking of the story, right? The things coming in from this side block our story, they stop our story, they're not our friends. And of course there's a lot more to each one of these things. If you flip through here, there's plenty to read about each one of these things and good examples. This one is much more simple, in front of, right? In front of. It's easy enough. He also has in back of because he's a good designer. In front of. In front of doesn't matter if you can't really see the thing behind it. See how we have this tiny little bit right here that we can see? This is something that slapping this on like this doesn't matter if we can't see that. If that goes away, the impact of this, it doesn't feel like it's added. Hang on just 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm back. Yeah, somebody decided to come do a sales call at the door during a pandemic. Don't do that. Okay, so again, in front of only really matters if we can see the thing behind it. If we just blocked it entirely, it doesn't look right. Right? We need a little hint of what it's hiding. That goes for everything. If we hide stuff, we need to have a little bit of it left. I don't think I really have good examples to do one from scratch, so I'm not going to worry about it. This one makes sense. We see this all the time with like those clearance stickers and stuff like that, where they'll like slap the new price on over the old price and get it to work that way. Juxtaposition and focus. Let's do juxtaposition first. Juxtaposition is just picking two things that are really different and putting them next to each other. Or taking two things that are really different and putting them on top of each other. However you want to arrange them, it's really that you want difference, right? You want difference. So you want things that don't really feel like they go together. These two things do not go together. Right? Even if there's symbolic ways that we could link them, but the visuals do not go together. right? We could have juxtaposition, our fancy pretty doors, and our rocks, right? These things do not go together. They fight. They're not friends. It's juxtaposition. We can bounce things off of each other. Sometimes we can do very, very small juxtapositions. They don't have to be big visual symbols. They can be really, really small little differences, and that's okay. But essentially just think of juxtaposition as a comparison, more of an extreme comparison. Focus and out of focus. Focus and out of focus is simple. Right? If I put a Lego dude up here, you're out of focus. Right? She makes a nice visual field, right? Let me put this behind it so you get the good color. It's a nice visual field. It's good color, it's good shape, it's very soft, but it doesn't give us an idea of what it is, and it's definitely not the focus. If I leave this here, your eyes are going to be attracted to the camera over there, the scissors, maybe the keyboard, maybe this finish right here, right? Sitting on top, again, on top. But this does not attract your eye. If it's in focus, it looks right. If it's out of focus, we don't like it. We could, right? If I do this, you're actually looking through to see things you can focus your eyes on. We do not like stuff that's out of focus because it feels like our eyes are broken. We don't like that. Ooh, here we go. Vertical lines. This image I would really suggest looking at in the book. On camera, the colors don't really come out right. Vertical lines are stability. They are power, but they're a very how do I say, like an architectural kind of power. They don't mean quiet. They mean they're much more on the authority end of the power and stability spectrum. They're not stable in the way that like the ocean is flat and stable, right? They're stable in the way that like authority and power is stable. Think of jail cell bars, right? All vertical. They're authority. Those of you that are on campus this semester, look at the railings by the student center. They're silver, and all of the railings are this way. And they don't need to be, right? Only the top one that you run your hand along needs to be horizontal. But all of the sub pieces are horizontal with just enough supports to keep it upright. And that looks good. That looks right, because it's the kind of stability that is friendly. It's that ocean kind of stability. The problem is, if you're on campus, go look at the fence outside the in like the front yard of the cafeteria. The front yard of the cafeteria has vertical black fence bars, and it looks awful. It looks terrible because they're out of place. It doesn't make sense. You're using an authority fence in a place where you want a friendly fence. It was just somebody picking a fence not knowing what they were doing, right? An architect did not have a hand in that choice, whereas on the student center, an architect obviously picked the right choice and picked something that was friendly. So vertical lines are structure and power and authority. Think about this, like, right? Prep school stuff. Vertical lines. We can think about it. Think about the grill on a BMW, right? All vertical lines. In each of those little, kidney bean shapes, all the lines are vertical. It's that power thing. All those grid lines are vertical. Okay. Horizontal. Yeah, we've already talked a little bit about horizontal, but horizontal is layers, width, strength through just like mass and weight. I like to think about it like water, right? It's strong because it's just there. It's flat. It's calm. It's nice. I don't really know how to say it beyond that. It's just it lacks the prison bar flavor, if that makes sense. Now, one thing we can do when we're working without computer stuff is, of course, doing lines either direction is going to be much easier with a computer because you can just make a piece and then copy it across. But one thing that we can do that you might not have thought of is just something simple. And this may give you some more options for those of you stuck in dorms where you can't really get out and steal lots of magazines. Is that I can do this. I'm going to do one more because I want some really tight little lines here. Now, of course, these folds are going to be wrong, but that's okay. I can go through and fold them the correct way. My lines aren't going to be quite sharp, but that's okay. Look, side that doesn't have drawings. Look at that. We have a little bit of stripes going on. Now we can work with those to do something. We can get an idea of the design. You can see our vertical stripes. See our horizontal stripes. Of course, I see. Sorry guys, I'm trying to get... There we go. I'm going to use the monitor in front of me as kind of a color swatch. So I've just turned most of my monitor red. So now we're getting red tones on top and the blue light from over there on the bottom. You can do this really simply if you want. This is one way. Just use the screen of a laptop or something. Put a big image that's just red on it, and it'll give you a little bit of a glow light. You can also take the light on your phone and shine it through a piece of cloth of that color. If you have gel lights, of course you should use gel lights, but I don't have gel lights and most people don't have gel lights or gel modifiers, so that's fine. We're not going to do that. Okay, so I've put another screen in front of it that's blue. See the difference? And then with it red, we get another kind of flavor on those stripes. But this is one option, and this is a really easy way to kind of get at something. If I put it at a harsher angle, we can get harsher stripes. Right? I can get really aggressive stripes. And angled stripes, one thing they don't talk about in the book that I would like to talk about a little bit is angled stripes. Angled stripes imply motion, right? If I do stripes like this, it implies falling, right? We're going down. We're progressing in this direction. If I do it the other way, this is upwards, flying. We're going to space. We're doing all that stuff. It's this direction. Think of like the Nike logo, right? The Nike logo. It's just that. It's a mix. We're leaning into it, and then we're powering out. Right? We can do both of those things very easily within that logo. Go over there. It's a nice thing. Light and dark. Just using big fields. Now this is something that really doesn't work if you want a lot of stuff in your image, right? If I have a lot of stuff, it takes away a little bit from this contrast. Same here. You could do it, right? You could do a very pale texture or just a very, very subtle dark texture in here. That might give you a little bit of something. But this really does rely on your eyes just going slam right to the opposite thing. And again, this is juxtaposition. If it's all white with nothing else, it doesn't really work. We need all white with something that we can focus and concentrate on, or all black, and we have something that's light that we can focus and concentrate on. And we could do this very, very easily. We could do it with a flashlight, right? I could just set up my little Lego guys, and I could use a flashlight and spot one of them and then take the picture. I could also set up a scene that was all very dark and then had lots of light. Let's see, do I have anything? Yeah, use the cover of this book. So I can just use the cover of a notebook, right? Cover of a notebook. No, I don't want to use Lego guy anymore. Or do I? So what if we use the cover of this black notebook with this in it? And I'm going to hold my hand over that. That's our little bit of light in this field of black. And of course I could, shade it and get a better dark on there. Or I could actually use the shadow, right? I could use the shadow to do something for my image. We could make... you could do, I don't know how to do shadow puppets, but you could do shadow puppets. Just a hand is actually pretty nice. It gives you a pretty interesting thing. You can actually see in the shadow that I have two lights up there pointed in the same direction. That's why you're getting the double shadow. But yeah, we can use a dark plane and just do a little bit of light. We can also do the opposite. And kind of what we have been doing is the opposite of starting out with light and putting a little spot of dark on there. Oh, this is something that we'll get to when we get into Photoshop, so I'm just going to cover it really briefly. It does not have to do with what we're doing today. Image quality. 300 dpi for print, good. 72 dpi, okay for web, but bad for print. 10 dpi, just really, really bad. 2 dpi, he makes a good point. So bad that now it's kind of cool again, right? You can take things that are so bad, like think of old video games, they're so bad that they're kind of cool. You can do stuff like this that takes an otherwise destroyed bit of content and make something interesting out of it. One thing to note, though, this is not a useful picture of a dog, right? This just isn't. You cannot use this as a picture of a dog. It doesn't look like a dog anymore. Image cropping. This is what we've been doing this whole time. We take a bigger image, we crop it down to something that gets us excited, that makes us enjoy whatever we're looking at. This is going to be a big thing when we get into doing this digitally, because of course it's much easier to zoom in on stuff than to try to get your phone to focus really, really closely. That's insanely hard to try to get your phone like really up on there. But one thing to note about image cropping is where and why are you doing that image cropping? Right? What are you trying to focus on in this thing? Right? Let's take this thing that I could just not figure out what to do anything with. Right? This image overall is very nice. It's a good picture. We know it's a good picture of food. But if I crop it down to just this texture, well, that's something completely different. Right? Now I have no idea what this is. This could be anything. Be a field, could be some sort of strange, like a forest where all the trees fell down after a hurricane or something. I have no idea. But it could be pretty much anything. It's not this obviously contextualized food thing. And by cropping in, we can remove context. Right? Context is just where it lives in the world, but we're just going to take all that out. Take all that out, do cool stuff with it. This one, repetition and pattern. This is a big one. This example is, of course, very cool, gorgeous, right? You take these two images, you repeat them over and over and over again, and you get something really neat out of it. Again, going to be much easier when we do digital stuff, but we've already started to see it. We have already started to see it. This. We like this because it's repetition and pattern, right? It's cool because it's all the same. Changes a little bit, but it's all the same. And repetition and pattern doesn't have to be perfect every time. It can be like this, right? We have repetition, we have pattern, but each of these doors is different in its own way. That's okay. That's cool. We can have that mix. Something like this. Right? Just this grid pattern. This grid pattern's boring. I don't like this grid pattern. Well, what if I take this? What if I cut 2 square? Oh, dang it. Fingers are too fat for this. What if I take 2 squares worth of black? It's sticking to my fingers. And just put it like that. Well, now we have a focal point in this pattern, right? Now we have something to look at in this pattern. We have a very boring pattern that's got something going on in it. And we can, you know, violate our pattern as well, right? We can, what if we kick this beast off at an angle? Does that do something better, worse, more interesting, less interesting? Would it matter if I took the photo of this whole page or if I took the photo of, you know, just that little square? Or maybe just a little square with it off center? Right, what can we do with this? What can we get done? Another thing we can do, repetition and pattern. I've got lots of goodies today. Sorry guys, this is going to make some noise. Now here's the thing. That is repetition without pattern. Right? We have a repeat object, but it's not patterned together in any way. It's not a grid. It's not, you know, organized in any fashion. We have repeat without pattern. That's fine. That gets something else done, but it's within the same category. We need to think outside the box when we're thinking about how to use these things. They're not limits. They're starting points. They're seeds. It's not saying that this is the way repetition and pattern is done. The book is saying repetition and pattern is a place to start. How about this? Try this out. For example, we have all these, right? Now, if I was feeling really, really into it, I could go through and I could make maybe all of these 1s and then 1 6. And that might give me a cool focal point. But I'm too lazy, so I'm just going to use a different color dye. Now, I have a focal point. Actually, I have kind of a cool photograph, too. I have a focal point in this. But now what matters is what number is this? Because this is, if everything's random, and I have one number that I've picked out and said, you need to pay attention to this, well, all of a sudden, what number that is really matters, right? If I make that a 6, I mean, that's the most important person in the group, right? That's our standout. That's our winner, right? Out of the crew, especially if you went through and took out all the rest of the 6s. Right? You take out most of the rest of the 6s, leave that one alone, and you say something. Well, we could do the exact opposite way. What if we do it like that? Well, that's our black sheep, right? That's our loser. That's our one person standing out by themselves and, you know, not winning. Or we could think about it like, you know, that person's number 1. But that doesn't work because we have other number 1s. So we can think about it in this very odd way. We can also use our repetition to exclude, right? We can exclude our 1 die. We can include at the edge. We can include in the center like we just did. We could have 2 groups, right? Well, what about that one? That was random. I did that on accident, but that's interesting. What about that? Does that one mean something? Does it matter that it's separate? Can we make it matter in some way? Do the colors matter? Right? On accident, I've kind of picked ASU colors. Did not mean to do that. I just like yellow and black. They're Hufflepuff colors. But we can pick these tiny, tiny little details, and in something like a grid, we can make it matter. Here, let's do this. What if we gridded these? I'm going to take most of these out of the picture. What if I did... Come on. There we go. What if I do that? What if I use that as my image? Does that say something? Does it give me a shape or an idea? What if I included some of these other images? But people like repetition, especially if this was zoomed in on, we took our photograph. We get some really neat things happening. Right? And grids can be very interesting very simply. What if we messed with our grid, right? We expect there to be lines. We expect there to be, you know, one whole column or one whole row is one color. But now we've just made it so that shape matters, right? That weird little L shape now really matters. And again, as soon as I get something that I like, it can go away. As soon as I get something that I like, I can photograph it. Oh dear. Come on. We can take the picture without being in the shadow. That would be nice. Okay, so I'm going to do 16 by 9. Get way in on that. Now I have an image that kind of does something interesting. Except, of course, now that I look at it, I notice that a whole bunch of those are 5s. And that is attracting the pattern recognition part of your brain, right? It gets just what, like, big parts of our brains are just built to recognize patterns. So we need to watch out. We need to look closely at stuff like this. And one really important thing that we can do to avoid situations like this one is when we get a design and we're like, hey, I really like that design. Show it to somebody else who hasn't been looking at it for an hour or two, because that person will notice if you've accidentally like made a swastika or something like that. Okay, sorry. That looks like focus. All right, I'm going to put these away in a minute because they're going to be super loud to put away. But simple little objects like that can do repetition or gridding, right? Of course, if you have square objects, they're really easy to grid. And I've lost my place in the book. There we go. Another thing to think about is there's only a few shapes that grid regularly. So there's only a few shapes that grid regularly. First one is a triangle. You can take an equilateral triangle, and that will grid out to the edges of infinity, right? Equilateral triangle will grid. Of course, my drawing's terrible, but an equilateral triangle will grid out to infinity, and you won't ever have a place where the edges can't meet right. The next one you can have is our friend square, right? You can grid this thing out to the edges of infinity. There's only one other shape that can grid out. Does anybody know what it is? Do any of you know? No? The only other shape that can grid out to infinity is a very poorly drawn hexagon. Hexagons, like a honeycomb or a beehive or a wasp nest, right? Honeycombs can grid out to infinity, and they will always work, which is cool. That will always grid. Now, one thing you can do with these two that you cannot do with this one is this one does not do something called subdividing. So when you're working on these repetition and pattern grids, this one you cannot subdivide. Or you can't subdivide it whole, I should say. So let's say I have this I have this 3x2 pattern, right? And I want to cut this one up in half, or in fours actually. I can subdivide this square into smaller squares that still fit the pattern. See that? Triangles, same thing. I can subdivide every triangle into 4 smaller triangles. And they fit perfectly, and there's no issues with the edges. Now, this hexagon, I cannot do that. There's no way I can draw small hexagons inside this that fit it out to the edge. It just does not work. We have these weird intersections that don't let us do that. So realize that we have 3 major kinds of grids that we can use that are repeating equilateral grids. There are many other kinds of grids if you don't care about those 2 properties, but these are really the 3. But realize that this is the one that does not subdivide. So just be aware that you cannot cut these up into the same shape. You could, of course, just cut them up into triangles if you want, right? This can definitely just be cut very easily into a bunch of triangles. But these hexagons cannot be cut up into smaller hexagons. So just kind of be aware of that. Little math lesson for you there, I guess, geometry. Okay. Symmetry and asymmetry. Symmetry and asymmetry. You can see that there are versions of symmetry and asymmetry. We have one page where we're mirroring things, and we have one page where we're not. Right? We're giving asymmetric. Symmetry and asymmetry is important. We generally prefer human faces that are more symmetric, but they actually can't be perfectly symmetric. Perfectly symmetric faces are super weird, and you actually kind of notice when somebody's face is too symmetric. It's very strange. We again do not have to do symmetry perfectly, right? Imperfect symmetry is just fine, right? If we fold this down the middle, it mirrors. That means it is symmetric. If we use our dice for examples again, this is symmetric in the sense that if I cut right down the middle, we have 3 on each side, but it's not symmetric in the sense that the numbers are the same. Right? The numbers are different on each side. Now we could go with asymmetry on color, right? If we cut this down the middle and mirror it, we have the same shape, right? We have 3 dice on each side, but their colors are different and their numbers are different. So none of these things, again, have to be absolutes. They could be partials. We could use this to say something, right? I could match, 2 and 3 and 2. 2, 3, 2, right? Now I've done something wrong, right? These aren't symmetric. Look at that. These aren't symmetric. I wasn't thinking, and I just copied this one to this one. This is a pattern, but it's not symmetry. If I fold this over, these dots are going to be in the wrong place. So to make this symmetric, I actually need to do this. And I know that that's a small thing, but now when we look at it with our eyes, it has a thing to it, right? It's got a more of a pattern. And the weird thing is our eyes start to see it as lines more than those dots, right? The other way we didn't see it like that, but this way we see, an outline, inline, and outline again. So just be aware that symmetry and asymmetry can be all sorts of different things. We could also do shape asymmetry, right? We can do, I guess that this would actually be shape asymmetry. We can make one different than the other one, especially if we had a mirror point. Let's see, what do I have for... Symmetries are oftentimes easier if we give the viewer a specific mirror point, right? This could just be a composition where we have 2 things. But if we give ourselves that line, we have the ability to now say, oh, well, obviously these are not mirrored things. We also want lined up sections, so we probably would want to make sure that, like, the bottom edges of these things are lined up. But this is something that we can obviously say, oh, this is two groups that are supposed to be correlated, I guess, by this line. How are they correlated, right? Is it a copy across it? Is it a mirror across it? Are they not symmetric across the mirror? How do you do that? Human beings are, of course, symmetric, right? This hand is the same as this hand mirrored. Right? Mirrored. Humans, mirror symmetry. Well, it's close. We're close to mirror symmetry. Not exactly. Dude, go away, guys. All right, simplicity and complexity we'll do next. Simplicity is easy. We're number one, right? It's very simple. Complexity. We're number one. Right? Is the complex one any better than the other one? Maybe. Maybe not. They both have their purposes. One thing to think about is that complexity can be very useful when you need to get across some ideas. Some ideas, it can actually be a hindrance to the understanding of that idea. Right? This does not necessarily help our understanding that we're number one. Right? If I made it even more complex, right? If I made it even more complex and I did a, let's see if I can make a pound symbol with or a number symbol with, what is it? Hashtag. Let's see if I can make a hashtag with dice. Now this is even more complex than the previous one, but I think that this actually gives us a greater understanding of the weird number one, right? Because it's not just what are they talking about with one, right? Because we're not telling this to somebody, we're just showing them this image. Well, if we have the number symbol, then that indicates number one. Where do we use number one? Pretty much just in that one statement, right? We're number one. How often, other than that, do you use it unless you're unless you're ordering like something off a menu? Okay, so simplicity, complexity. And one thing to note with simplicity and complexity as well is also size doesn't matter. This die, that, if I take a picture of this whole thing, that is an equal simplicity to if I take a picture of this space. Right? Neither one is more or less simple than the other. They're the same. Okay, so that covers most of what I wanted to look through with the book. I'm going to give a few more examples just so you have some aesthetic ideas. I do want you to start thinking about what you might be able to use out of your stuff that could make some cool images. One thing that, again, for the you're stuck in your dorm, what can you do? Not something like that. That's something that's just those are just can lid. Those are just can tops, right? But I could also do something like I could take one of those can tops, and I could just color it blue with permanent marker, right? Or I could color it black if I wanted to. Whatever color marker. Actually, nail polish would probably be really good for this if you wanted a really bright color, because it would cover it more evenly. This is not going to cover very well. But now look at that. I've given that one some uniqueness. I've given it some difference from the rest. I could also, do the same dice thing of huddling all these up with this one off by himself and get an interesting visual. Or what happens, again, if he's on top, right? What happens if he's, or she, is underneath the rest, right? And I just see a little bit of the blue through the bottom. Well, now is it hiding? Is it hiding from me? Is it hiding from the rest of them? Is it, what's this what's that little can tab doing? But yeah, just to give you an idea that simplest stuff. Swoosh. One thing, just because I have them. By the way, if you ever need something just to do for fun, you can just get googly eyes that are sticky on the back, and you can put them on people's stuff, and that's deeply satisfying. But yeah, just little googly eyes. You can take these, you can arrange them into a pattern, you can add them to some of these other designs, right? What if we do... And of course, if you don't have googly eyes, just cut out a round piece of paper and put a black dot in it. For the purposes of this, that's completely fine, right? What if I make a weird little smiley with just that and a homeschool, right? I could make an ad for headphones by just taking this. Let's see. By just taking this and drawing headphones. Or I could take the picture. Right. Of course, I have to hold these open or they'll close, but I could, you know, put the headphones on there, take the picture, and get something really interesting out of it. We can use all these objects. Let's see, what other goodies do we have? Repetition. Again, this is repetition, right? These eyes, even though they're not the same size and everything, we still get repetition out of it. Put all my eyeballs back. Let's say I want to do a camera ad. I have somewhere just... There it is. Just a bag of lens caps. Right, I don't want to use anybody's logo, so I'm going to flip them upside down when I can. Oh, there's a filter. Another lens cap flipped upside down. But the neat thing is that all these caps are these circles that start to give me a pattern. Right? They start to give me this really interesting shape. And what do I want to say about this, right? What do I want to use this for? Do I want to, you know, line them up real precise? Well, that might look good. Right? Do I get a cool, neat pattern out of that? Well, not really, because I have too many small things down here, and it's upsetting the grid. It's a little bit better. Or what if I want to say that these are, you know, all the lenses that I use? Well then, maybe I could just flip them all over to the side that has their logos. And now that says something else, right? If I organize all these lines so they all match, well, let's do that and see. Because again, we're just messing with repetition. We're messing with these little starter seeds. What can I do to make these things work? All right, we did them all at an angle. I photograph that, and I take it and I edit it. What can I do with that? Can I make something interesting? Can I bring another element into it, right? Can I do that? Of course, I'm sorry, we're not right under the camera, so it doesn't look right. There you go. Right, does that do something for me? What if I move this? What if I took that and then put well, that's kind of neat, right? I'd probably want to, you know, organize them a little bit better, but gives me kind of a neat pattern. I like the wood with the black and silver camera stuff. That gives me something to do. Okay, well, these got to go back in the bag. Guys, don't get into photography. It just makes you collect crap. So much stuff. So much stuff. Alright, what else? One thing to think about with this that you can also use, we haven't really talked about, we've been talking about objects that are small, like, individual objects, even things like the camera lids are, single pieces. We haven't really talked about lines, but that's something that we can work with. We can take something that has, I'll be right back. Perfect. So this little baggie of wires, of course, if you have jewelry or something like that, that would work just as well. But we can do lines just as easily as we can do these more, individual atomistic shapes. We can do lines. Gonna get my white paper because I like it. Now, what if we just have, straighten this one out a little bit. What if I wanted my company to go from number 1 or from number 2 to number 1, right? Or what if I wanted to use these as eyes and have a weird smiley face, right? We can use these in ways that might not be obvious at first and get really interesting things. And you can do, especially if you have better wire than this, these wires aren't really great. They don't really hold their shape. But we could do interesting things that give us, that's a really nice shape just by itself. The loop and then the shadow that casts and how it kind of breaks off. It's a really nice just visual. And I actually really like that single thing. I'm going to edit that one. See where we can help if I unlock my phone. Okay, so I have this image, which of course is going to be very bright. Go to our crop. It also helps to know where the buttons are on your phone. Bump that, bump my contrast quite a bit, bump my exposure to get that white really nice. Gonna bring my whites up, gonna bring my shadows down. Nope, no vignette, that looked gross. Blacks up. Color, definitely want some more color. I'm actually kind of starting to like, there's a pink tone on the bottom of this that's from that red that I left up on the screen. But it's giving me a very nice, almost like 80s sort of look. And save, I'll show you guys. So this very nice. Sorry for the, it's having issues with the exposure. Let me see if I can turn the screen brightness down, see if that helps. Does that help? There we go, that's much better. But you can see how just that simple curve is kind of nice. There's a little bit more red on the image than there is in the webcam. But we get just this interesting shape with not very much work or effort. That's what it does. All right. So there's that. Okay. What I would like you guys to do, what I would like you guys to do is go through that book. And if you can't go through the book, then just go through this video, because you can just go back through all the things that I said. If you go back to the very beginning, there's just a list. You can just read through that list and copy it down. This is a big homework assignment, but I want you to make one of these things using one of those ideas. Sorry, one for each I want you to make. Let me get that back. So here's the list again, so you can see the list. I want you to make sure that you can see that. There you go. So I want you to go through this list, and I want you to use each one of these things playing with anything you want, right? Get out all your jewelry, throw that out. See if you can use clothes and shoes. Can you go bigger, right? What if you go to full like full human size and have t-shirts, or what if you include people's hands or things like that? What can you do with this style of very simple non-digital design? And I just want you to go through and do one that's big and small. Do one that messes with scale. Do one that does the top to bottom inversion. Do one that works with left and right. I want you to go through and just do one for each of these things. If you would like, try to keep it to a theme. That's a big challenge, but if you want to, try to keep it to one theme. Pick one theme. If you want to do advertising, if you want to do some sort of public service announcement kind of thing, if you want to do some civil rights issue, pick one and then stick to it and run through all of these as ideas for that topic. It's really hard. Keeping all these on one topic is going to be insanely hard, but go for it, right? If you get 75% and the other ones are just ones you throw in, cool, that's fine too. But yeah, just go through each one of these and you will find some really interesting stuff just by trying to make these work. All right, do you guys have any questions before we call it for the day? Yes, no, maybe? I don't know. No question? You got one? Okay, all right, well, have a lovely weekend. Enjoy, and also remember that you can have a lot of fun with paper too. All right, just regular sheets of printer paper. That's that one that I folded earlier. You can take a straight one and you can angle it, right? I bet you both have earrings that probably just look exactly like this. But you can just do this with objects. You could do it with clothes, right? You can take something that's been folded in the bottom of a dresser and unfold it and use that wrinkle as texture. Yeah, so think on how you can do stuff. Think on how you can make beautiful things with simple stuff. Make really cool things. All right, so as long as you guys don't have any more questions, have a lovely weekend, and I will talk to you again on Monday.